welcome back. Today we have some plates that the beautiful and talented Mike Day had designed. These are going to be welded onto the steering knuckle. I have some other plates that were from a steering kit that doesn't exactly fit what I was trying to do with this ram setup. So we're going to be cutting that off. I don't even think they're tacked on, I think it's just mocked up. We're going to be cutting those off and we're going to be placing these parts on there just to see if we can get everything to jive. Mike Day had designed this bracket system there for running the double-ended ram, and we're going to be utilizing his outer stuff too. He's doing a similar build. We'll maybe dive into that a little bit later, but he's doing a similar build. He designed some parts for it, and we are going to be using those parts on this build. So I'm going to make some spacers to keep these components aligned where they need to be. There's some bends that need to be made. There's a little bit of, rust removal, just so we can have a clean surface to tack stuff to. So we'll head over to the lathe and turn up some spacers.
So here I am machining some aluminum spacers so that when I bolt it all together, they'll hold everything nice and true, facing it, drilling a hole for the bolt. And that way when we're welding these on, we don't have to worry about overheating our rod ends and damaging them. So the bolts go through, the spacer goes on, and then it holds everything at the right distance and the right angle.
So the way Mike designed these, there's a slot here. It shows you your bend location. And then if you look at this, it's got a little bit of a angle to it, so I got to bend it so that it sits flat on that. We're going to adjust the machine here. I think the last thing I was bending was the super thin sheet metal in the back. So I'm just going to adjust this clamp, move this backwards, have a little more clearance. Excuse me. Coming through. Yeah, we're going to move that clamp back and get that bent up. Boop, boop. Now, just a tiny bit proud. It's pretty great. Very pleased with that. Bring that back over to the knuckle. We're just going to try to fit this up now. Got our spacer. Bam. My goodness. Alright, we're going to come in here and show you how nicely that fits. Look at that. Beautiful. Got a nice tight line here. Nice and tight up top. I mean, it's just that Mike Day quality, And then this. Okay. Our angle is correct. Now this piece here is going to get bent in to meet that.
Hold on, what's that out there? Oh yes! It's Gary's 1-ton solid axle swapped Avalanche on 40s. Pretty sweet deal right here. Gary decided that since I've been working on this for a while, I need a little motivation to go off-roading. So, went on a little snow trip. Now, about a week before this, we had a massive snowstorm. It dumped like 34 inches of snow. It's compacted a little bit here. It's been warming up, but we used to be able to sneak underneath this big tree here. With the snow, it picked us up high enough so that it wouldn't quite slip underneath. You can't see very well from this angle, but there is a slope that he's about to climb up with that, which is going to raise the roof and make it so it won't be able to slip underneath. The snow was really sticky and slimy, so it's tough to kind of stay on track, but we decided to go down another trail.
Ah, it's leaving a kayak in the middle.
Right, 14 Bolt representing.
It is. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna get back to.
So I told Gary to climb up on this rock so we could flex the truck out a little bit, but the snow is so slick that it didn't quite work out the way that we had planned.
Oh,
That is more than flex. Wait on drive shaft. Close to the drive shaft?
I can't tell.
That was gonna black up. That sounds like drive shaft.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, drive shaft?
Yep.
Don't do that. Ah, they're stopping there.
We stacked a few rocks under the tire that it loved to kick right back out, but eventually we were able to get enough so that we could sneak it up and over.
Whoa. The pinion's like touching.
How much?
I mean, it's on there good.
Back off a little bit.
You may kick that. Yeah. There we go. Now let's pile. If we pile a couple more. Dang it.
So the drive shaft was so bent that we had to drive back in four-wheel drive. So some of the load was on the front drive shaft at 15 miles an hour because the thing was twisted.
And right into my fender flare. Inappropriate.
Oh, get it out of there. I know. Oh man.
So we have a little rubber right before we left. Hub still locked. Plate missing. But actually,
We made it back though.
look how bad the lights are scratched. Look how many tree branch scratch marks are all over the front. Look how scratched it is.
Oh god. What have we
Look
done?
how much bark is in the freaking.
It's just.
Should have brought like a floor jacket. Look how high it is off the ground.
Oh god.
Scoob, like whoa.
That thing's had it.
Didn't even make much noise.
So after that great adventure, we're back in the shop.
Okay. This is our steering box. It's crudely mounted, just kind of clamped in place right now for demonstration and mock-up purposes. We went with the Astro box because pitman arm goes forward from the box, which allows us to mount everything nicely in here. If the pitman arm went rearward, this box would have to be way up here and then be getting into our bumper and all that other stuff. So we have a drag link mocked up here. It has that bend, you'll notice right there. Now, the reason it has that bend will become evident as I cycle the steering. So I'm just gonna grab Richard Pryor there and give this thing a tweak. I hadn't really mentioned, the suspension is at full bump right now. So this is as high up as it goes. So now you can kind of see the clearances we're dealing with here. This is turned all the way to the right. Still have clearance in there. Straight shot through. So this all looks fine and dandy. But remember, we need to get a track bar to fit through this space as well. So that is our next exciting fabrication challenge. I've mocked up one here. It kind of follows the same bend. So the track bar does is it locates the axle in relation to the frame. So it has to be mounted on the outside of that frame rail, it has to be mounted to the axle on this side, and the angle has to match. Angle and length have to match that of the drag length so that we don't get bump steer, which would be the steering changing as you cycle through suspension travel. So I will probably tack that box on because right now we have some clamps on it. Probably tack that plate on just for the time being so we can get those clamps out of the way and start making some mock-up brackets. Now, the reason that I'm doing all this at full bump is when the suspension's down, there's all the clearance in the world. But because I want this to be as low as possible, which means we have like a 1/4 inch between the oil pan right now, maybe less, and the steering ram, we're pretty much at full up. There's not a lot of room to go. Yes, I could have pushed the engine further back into the cab, but then I would be losing AC, I'd be losing interior space, so this is the compromise. Engine's up pretty high, pretty far back. This is what we're gonna go with. So let's tack that box plate in place and then start laying out our track bar. Here is the drag link and the track bar mock-ups. This tubing is just some cheap tubing that I'm using. They are going to be exactly the same length. I got a bolt there holding them. I'm just going to tack these together and then we can further mock up. I got that little cardboard mock-up bracket there. Once that's in place, we'll put both of these back in place, make sure we have the same angles, and I will design the bracket that goes on the axle side. With my cardboard bracket holding one end of the track bar, I needed something to hold the other end, so here I'm using a piece of metal that I've tack welded onto the track bar, and then I'm using a clamp to hold it to the frame so I can adjust the height. Once I get the height where I wanted, I'm then referencing the axle tube and the rod end to then be able to draw a bracket using Fusion 360. I'm on my way back home. So once the brackets are designed, I can then export them as DXF files and cut them out on the CNC plasma table. Then I can use the brake, bend them up, and weld them on. Jason stopped by and actually threw down a couple. Now that we have both track bar brackets tacked on, we can cycle the suspension up and down to make sure we're not getting bump steer and to make sure that we still have good clearances everywhere. Now the tightest clearances are going to be when the suspension is fully bumped out, but we still want to make sure that nothing happens once the suspension's up in the air. We're mocked up. Track bar mount at the frame. Fits nicely. That runs down. Track bar on the axle. The inordinately long bolt. So this is tacked into place. We have that funny angle. It looks a little goofy right now because the suspension is all the way down, right? The axle is as far away from the chassis as it's going to get. We have those bends because when it all tucks down here, we need it for clearance. You've probably seen that earlier. So this is a fully drooped out. I think it looks nice. We're pleased with that. The next considerations, I guess, is mounting the steering box. If we fully mount that, we weld these other brackets on, then we can go on to looking into coilover mounts and our bump stops. So we're going to mount that steering box and make a couple pieces that'll go through the frame here that allow us to not crush the frame when we bolt it together. So we're going to get that started now. So currently this plate is just tacked in place. I'm going to want to maintain that same position, so I want to make some scribe marks here to reference so I can mount that right where it is right now because it fits nicely. So take off the drag link. Use a marker. Make some nice lines here. as a reference. And then I'll snip those tacks and get that thing off of there.
So I turned up these tubes on the lathe, just making sure that they're nice and true so they'll go through the frame straight. These are going to prevent that frame tube from crushing when we're bolting it on. They're offset and sticking through that short section there that you're seeing, and then this third one I'm putting on, those are to allow clearance for the steering box when it bolts up. Now, using that plate as a guide, I have marked the holes, and then I'm just drilling them large enough for the tubes to slip through the frame rail, and then I'm clamping that in place so that I can drill out the other side once I have the first side through. Then I'm just opening up the holes that I drilled through, cleaning up. I needed to clearance that track bar bracket a little bit so the bolts would have room, and then I'm going to tack that on. Now that the steering box is bolted back on with the new stronger plates and tubes, we're just going to kind of check our clearances going up and down with a little bit of steering action going on as well. So we're pretty tight to that track bar, so I'm just kind of checking the clearances right now.
Alright, so we have a couple issues here. The axle is not centered at ride height right now, so that this may or may not be an issue. But we are contacting here, and we're still off of the bump a decent amount. It's just such a massive tire. We may even get close to this body mount here, but we'll see. And over here, in the rear of the wheel well, it's kind of expected. A little bit of contact here. And again, I think I'm gonna go back up to where we're at ride height and then center the axle with the track bar. I could cut that bracket and move this bracket this way a little bit as well. So we're gonna play it by ear, center the axle, go up and down a couple times, maybe snip this corner out so we have clearance so we can go all the way down. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, if you're looking at the track bar bracket on the axle and the tire, you can see we do get like a tiny bit of rub right there. Just contacting. And then it starts to move away. So we're gonna take a little meat out of that. We are going to cut that. Sneak it over a little bit. And then we'll reassess from there.
Just because I decided to set this thing down. This is full bump front and rear.
I just wanted to verify for myself that the rockers were level at full bump because I hadn't done that in a while.
And yeah, the rear stuffed right up. And the front
Also, that's it. All she wrote. We're tucked. All the room for exhaust. Pretty cool. I know there are lower rigs out there, but this one's pretty low.
we've made some compromises, but also approach angle, pretty good. I think we're doing all right in that respect. All right, we have clearance. Right here, it's the tightest it gets. We do have clearance. That was after shifting the track bar bracket over. I don't want to go too far. There's other issues that may arise from that, so that's fine. But steering and track bar are in, just mocked up. We haven't fully welded them. We're using mock-up tubes, but they function. I cycled the suspension up and down. I flexed it out some. Can't flex it completely because I have to cut this corner here. And then on the other side, you can see the front. This is going to have to be snipped as well. Bloop. Not a big deal. It's just sheet metal. It's
kind of wild how much those tires swing. You know, it's a big tire, and you end up, like, even the control arms, you know, there's not a ton of clearance down in there. It's just a big tire. There's no way around it, and these axles steer quite a bit, so it gets in the way. Steering box is mounted, not fully welded out, but inside you can see the sleeves that go through. Let's see if we can do that again. Yep, right up in there. Those are our sleeves. Nice and strong setup. Gonna add a gusset to the top bolt hole later, but look over there. Those are in. There'll be a little more bracing. There's gonna be a cross member up front, but one thing at a time. Next thing we're gonna be doing is upgrading the master. Why are we worried about that now? Well, obviously we have bigger brakes. We're gonna need to move more fluid for those brakes to function. If the new master is larger, that's gonna move forward a little bit, and that may limit our coilover mounting options. So, cool thing about this, if you've watched the earlier episodes, this whole nose comes off. So I'll mount the new master cylinder, we'll pull the nose off, and then we can mount the coilovers where we want, and then put the nose back on, and then trim these inner fenders where necessary to allow us to fit the sheet metal over it. So, come a long way. It's just kind of cool to be able to see the wheels steer and the axle go up and down, the track bar centering it, all that stuff, which is, it's pretty cool. One step closer to it being on its own weight, which is a big milestone for me. Something I want to see if I can roll it out. I will be building a steering shaft. You can see there's plenty of room for that. Just need to get the fitting, or the U-joint that goes on the bottom here with the correct spline. And then we'll be able to steer it with a steering wheel. That'll be neat. So, forward progress. Pretty excited. Thanks for following along, guys. More to come.